Okay, guys, you're listening to the Eiffel Tower, and we're going to be doing an episode all about whether French people are good at speaking English. You got me, Oliver G, here, together with
James Vazina,
and a mysterious co-host in the corner.
Hello, I'm Luke Thompson.
Luke Thompson, a co-host?
I don't know if anyone has ever heard my voice on your show before.
Not on our show, but I think podcast listeners maybe recognise that voice.
Yeah, I expect so.
Why would that be?
Because I do a podcast for learners of English, which not many people in France listen to.
Why is that?
I'm not sure.
That's funny because that's basically the topic of the show, French people speaking English. Let's hit the jingle and get into it.
Eiffel Tower with Oliver G.
That's our jingle. I don't know why you're laughing, Luke.
Because I imagine in post-production you've added the jingle there. But what I was just treated to was both of you just kind of doing a na-na-na-na-na. It just looks like a normal conversation from this point of view. But when all your listeners consume it, it's like a finely crafted sort of, piece. It's like a guitar that's been made by hand. It's like a crafted
That's
piece.
Exactly what it's like. But, I didn't know that we'd get a podcaster on and go and ruin all the trade secrets from the get-go.
All the post-production magic.
Anyway,
lovely jingle.
Thank you.
Nice. Jingles are important for podcasts.
Stephen Clark, previous episode, really liked it. In fact, when he shared the episode, he said, excellently named show, The Eiffel Tower, with a brilliant jingle to boot.
Well, it is an excellently named show.
You can't just repeat Stephen Clark.
The beautiful jingle to boot, which is a nice phrase.
And it's interesting that you say that, because being an English teacher as you are, and that's the kind of thing you're doing in your podcast, is you're sharing phrases and you're teaching people English through the medium of listening, right?
That's the idea.
But more on your podcast later and your comedy. I want you to answer a question straight up, no thinking. We put people on the spot here.
Okay.
Are French people good at speaking English?
They're better than they say that they are, or they're better than they let themselves believe.
Tell me more about that.
It's quite complicated because, as you know, on the Eiffel Tower, French people are quite complicated, aren't they? Well, you would know because you are a French person hiding inside...
Yeah, I'm a little bit complicated.
You're a French person hiding inside the body of someone who speaks English like an English person.
James is maybe an English person hiding inside a French body.
Really? Which one is it, James?
Probably best that I'm the French person to give the
balance.
Yeah, the balance here.
Yep. The balance.
La balance.
Exactly.
Balance. Okay.
Yeah, look at the way he pronounces that.
That's what every time we do a French word, we check with James for a pronunciation guide.
That's all he wants me on here for. It's just to check his pronunciation. Yeah.
Okay, just to verify, just to give some credence to the whole podcast. Because if it was just one Australian guy talking about France, it'd be like, you've got no qualifications to talk about this.
I've got a French guy here.
Oh, he's qualified. Wait a minute. I know a French person.
Yep. And his name's James. Very French.
Right.
James. So what? You said that French people are better at. I thought that you were going to say no, they're not good at English. That's what I was.
Well, that wouldn't be very nice of me to say that, would it?
It'd
to
be
like,
horrible.
no, they're rubbish. They can't string a sentence together. They're appalling. Their sentence structure is a disaster. They can't pronounce words. That wouldn't be nice. So
okay.
So are they better than they used to be?
They're better than they used to be, definitely, and they are also better than they will let. They're better than they think.
They're better than they think.
And it's a bit complicated because I think there are a few reasons why French people have some trouble with English, just like any people have trouble learning another language in adulthood. A lot of it comes from the experiences of learning English at school.
Rough teachers?
Like rough teachers who, first of all, the school culture is a little bit sort of strict and a bit sort of tough, and the expectations are very high.
We need background. How long have you been in France?
I've been in France for about 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
So not that long, but I've learned just from exposure to adults who I'm trying to teach English to, just the sort of the therapy sessions that I've done with my students.
The lessons they're called, no?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The trauma that people have told me about. That French people experience when attempting to learn English at school, that it's horrible. First of all, the French teacher is a total disaster. The teachers that they all had at school were like, bonjour, it basically speaking English but with a very French accent.
Hang on, why were they saying bonjour?
I don't know, because they're so French.
They're so French, they don't even teach them English words.
I was going to try and do a French impression, but you'd probably better ask Paul Taylor to do that.
No. I thought about this the other day. We need to have guests who are English doing French accents. It needs to be a regular thing. Can you do a French accent?
Not really.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Do this next bit in French accent.
Okay, so the teacher kind of like, hello, today we are going to be learning English.
Pretty good.
That is so exaggerated.
It's totally exaggerated, okay. But the point is that
we're not making fun of the French here.
No,
we're not.
We're figuring out France.
We're figuring out France. Okay.
No, but I did ask him to do it.
Okay, no.
He did. I was forced to do it.
Look at the body language from James crossing he's crossed his arms, he's turned away from Paul, and he's not looking very impressed.
So, as I was saying, like the teachers that many French people, the adults that I've met, have learned English from were like, French people themselves who hadn't learned English to a high standard themselves. And so the people learned English from like these French teachers who can hardly speak the language. Some of them, not all of them. Obviously, I've met loads of French teachers who are brilliant at English. But the complaint that I've heard many times is that they say our teachers don't speak good English, and that sort of feeds into the way that they teach. And also the teaching methods, this is what people say, that they always focus on, like teaching grammar, and it's a lot of translation, a lot of reading and writing. And then, the average French person comes out of the school system not really being able to hold down a confident, fluent conversation.
Because they've been pounded with grammar and lessons.
They've been pounded with grammar and lessons and tests and exams, and their head is full of these ideas. They've got to be perfect, otherwise it's just a disaster.
But I think similarly, when people here learning French get taught the same system. They learn grammar, they learn all this kind of stuff. They don't learn street French, as in how to order something in a restaurant. They know how to conjugate verbs. And it's essentially pretty useless stuff.
Yes,
I mean, it's not useless, but they're giving such a strong foundation.
It's very, very hard to teach someone a language, and what teachers often end up doing is that they teach the sort of structural stuff, but without the skills work, which is necessary for sort of helping people to actually open their mouths and communicate.
And is that what you were just talking about, conjugating verbs? That's something that in France, learning French, you go through, I mean, how many tenses are there? 16, 20?
In French?
In French.
Yeah, loads. Yeah,
loads.
So, he's an English teacher, he's not a French teacher.
Okay.
All I know is that there are loads.
But maybe, are they using the French methods? So speaking, because you don't actually learn grammar or the same way. You don't learn English the same way as you learn French in France.
Yes.
Are they maybe just mixing the two together, and it's not right?
I'm sure that a lot of it is the way that the brain is used to dealing with French, and the way that they've approached learning French, they apply that to English, and it doesn't quite work in the same way. And there's a lot more focus on things like verb conjugation when, I don't know. Yeah, essentially, it's like influence from the first language on the learning of the second language, which is, the same for every single foreign language learner out there. The first language always has massive levels of influence on the way you speak the other language. Pronunciation, for example.
You know what doesn't help with pronunciation?
What's that?
Dubbing.
Right.
Dubbing. This is I think one of the big reasons why English is not so widely spoken in France, because so many films and TV shows are dubbed into French.
Right, yeah.
What do you reckon?
Maybe also because there's a lot of, speaking of dubbing, so there's a lot of French films there as well. There's a lot of French music. Radio stations there's an amount of French music they have to play legally. So maybe
whereas in Scandinavia or whatever, they don't have so many films. They don't have so much music. A lot of the music is in English.
They have no culture. That's what you're saying.
I stopped
don't
short of
write
it.
in. We won't read your emails.
No. Do write in. We want to read your emails. That's a perfect segue into read a letter of the week. Play the jingle. Hang on. Luke gets it, but this email that we got in is kind of relevant to what we were just talking about as well. It's from Heather Kennedy, and she writes on Facebook, you're going to like this, James, love this series, right? But then she says, it's so British.
Oh, it's to be honest, it's about what, 25% British?
Yeah.
This show.
Well,
how much is it? No, wait. Ollie's actually half English as well.
You're half English
too.
Okay, so it's 50% English.
Yeah. So
well, today,
British.
Today,
you're bringing it up.
Yeah, we've got.
I've raised the level of Britishness.
What does that make it? Yeah, this is so. Heather Kennedy, thanks for your email. We're not sure. It's a bit British, it's a bit Australian, a bit French, but we take it.
It's a multicultural show.
The door just slammed.
That was a French person slamming the door as well.
What about that?
All nations, all people slam doors, but no one does it quite like a French person leaving an office.
As you've just heard.
Yeah. For anyone wondering why someone's slamming an office door, it's because World Radio Paris shares their studio. And not everyone's happy about it, apparently.
With French businessmen.
They were not happy, were they?
No, they weren't.
They were like, oh, let's storm out of this.
Had we wronged them by saying something about French?
Probably, yeah.
Well, just, for the last 15 minutes, we've been...
I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just trying to uncover the mystery of the French person.
Do you think they understood us? Maybe they didn't understand.
No,
maybe they did understand, and that's why they were angry.
Luke, that's why I had to defend your imitation of a French accent.
You did your imitation of a French, and 2 of them were here. 3 with James.
God.
Someone's not coming back.
Not to mention people in your audience who might be French.
No. But let's talk about your podcast for a bit, Luke.
Okay.
Let's talk about it. You've been doing it for what? Years?
For years.
You're an award winner.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your semi-recent award, which was a little while back.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about, for someone who's never heard your podcast, they're listening to us, they're listening to the Eiffel Tower, they're thinking, I want to hear another podcast. Sell it to them.
What, they're thinking, I want to listen to another podcast.
That's not a good sign.
Oh, God. They all know that I was reading their mind.
After this one is finished, then the next one could be an episode of my podcast. It's a podcast for learners of English, but I don't just kind of do listen and repeat. Can I have a coffee, please? It's not all that kind of thing. Instead, it's a lot like the Eiffel Tower, really.
How so?
Just sort of
so English.
People just bantering about subjects, and it's kind of laid back and chilled out.
Try to bring a bit of high culture into it as well.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be hard to take it up a step, would it?
Essentially, I just try and talk in an interesting and amusing way to keep my listeners involved, because listening in a relaxed way to something that's kind of personalised and authentic and not completely scripted is a good way to learn the language,
Sure. But the people that are learning them, what sort of levels are they? Could they be understanding this show so far, or are we talking too quickly?
For my audience, most of them would understand us, I think, in this conversation.
Because you've taught them.
Because I've taught them. I've brought them up to that level.
Your army.
From episode 1 to episode...
over 450 at least.
That's a lot of English lessons.
All part of the grand plan that I have, basically, to take over the world.
Hang on, how's this going to work?
So there are going to be no English teachers in France anymore. It's not even going to be a tape recorder. It's just going to be an MP3. We play your podcast. And every French person is going to be speaking English.
Yeah,
it's not just for French people, though. It's for anybody that doesn't speak English that wants to learn English.
It's anyone.
Okay.
It's anyone in the world, really. I mean, they don't even have to be learning English.
I was just going to say, because you've had some, you've had guests on from Paul Taylor, for example, comedian.
I have had Paul.
He's a mate of yours, no?
I've had Paul on the podcast many times. He's one of the most common guests.
Really?
And we know Paul on the podcast in ways that the rest of the world doesn't really know. If you haven't listened to the podcast, you don't know the real Paul.
Oh, wow.
You don't know, for example, that he doesn't actually know any words in English.
In English?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like he does, but not the proper big words. You probably know more than him. Although you're half French, half English. Basically, Paul is ethnically English, but linguistically half French.
He spent too much time on this side.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm making fun of Paul, which is kind of, we do that to him on the podcast. We tease him and things like that.
But you've done a good segue. I've just realised we're talking all about his podcast. People are never going to listen to us again.
Of course they are.
It's switched off already.
Oh, radio silence. Let's get back to the topic for a second.
Yeah,
learning English.
Right. So you were talking about the fact that films here get dubbed into French,
exactly.
And that's like a big reason why perhaps the level of English is not as good as it could be, because you look at Norway, Sweden, and their English is amazing, and you think, why? What's the secret? And part of it is that they don't dub their TV shows and movies into Norwegian or Swedish or Danish or whatever. It's all just broadcast in English, which probably does have a big effect.
Which, interesting. I had this neighbour of mine, young French guy, who spoke pretty good English, and he said it was largely thanks to the fact that he couldn't wait for the new Game of Thrones episodes to come out on the French TV, and he'd download them, so they didn't have French subtitles, they weren't dubbed or anything.
Yeah.
And he had to understand he had to learn to understand it because he was just so into this show, and it helped him. I mean,
That's not the first time I've heard someone actually say. I mean, a lot of people watching, a film series.
The problem is
that was the way they're learning English.
Yeah, in fact, to be honest, whenever I ask people how they learn English, everyone always says, "Oh, I just watched movies and DVDs in English," and then pow, as if by magic, somehow this amazing English comes out of them. I've got friends, comedians, French comedians who speak really good English, and I'm like, how on earth have you managed to do this? And they're just like, I don't know, I just watched a bunch of movies and then this happened.
They all come out with, the problem is they all come out sounding like Jon Snow.
Right.
That's the big problem, isn't it? They've all got accents from the north.
Their English is limited only to the words and phrases they've heard in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I've never actually seen it, you know. Have you
really? No, I haven't. I'm surprised Ollie hasn't shrieks yet.
Ollie?
Normally,
James hasn't seen anything.
I haven't seen any films.
James has not seen any TV or films.
So you occupy this sort of void that Paul Taylor occupies. Obviously, when you learn both French and English, they cancel each other out.
Maybe put us together and they'll just be like nothing.
I think it's just maybe for bilingual people like James, there's just so many things out there that you just have to pick and choose. You can't, 10 seasons of Game of Thrones, forget about. I've got to catch up on the French Idol.
I listen to the Eiffel Tower instead in my spare time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, you know, many people out there will now continue listening to the Eiffel Tower because it's proven to be so good for your English. All you need to do...
Thanks, listeners.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
What about... I've got an interesting thing. I think it's interesting. I've written down in my notes that some French people don't like speaking English because they get teased for their accent.
Yeah, in my experience, French people are a little bit cruel about each other's... English. They make fun of each other a bit,
and a lot of people would vote that French is the sexiest accent in the world.
Right.
Some would.
Yeah.
So what's that about?
I think French people like to beat themselves up a little bit about their English. There's a bit of there's some low self-esteem going on here.
But why?
It doesn't sound very French.
No.
Sort of low self-esteem. Yeah.
That's true. French are quite proud, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to English, French people are always very negative. Like, oh no, I'm terrible. You know, my accent is awful, and French people are terrible at speaking English.
Actually, that's very true. People will say, "Hey, do you speak English? Do you want to, have a chat or something?" And they'll be like, "No, I really don't." And then you start talking, you realise their English is, I mean, it's perfect.
Often their English is very good. Yeah. But they're held up by this idea that they can't speak because I have a very strong accent.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
It's a bit of a cartoon French accent, though, isn't it?
I've heard it's not bad. I thought it was pretty good.
I've got. What about English words that exist in French, which just don't exist anywhere else? I'm talking about words like parking.
Right.
Where's that come from?
English.
Yeah, God knows.
English.
And is that maybe?
That was pretty easy.
It hasn't come from English.
Parking,
you don't say parking. You say car park.
Ah, you mean when they've invented?
Yeah, we talked about a whole list of them. We found a whole dressing.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, Paul Taylor's already done this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does this in his show.
Oh,
so I'm now due to copyright issues, I'm not allowed to talk about this subject because Paul's done it completely. Paul owns all of those words.
I mean, but the thing is, Paul's doing an episode on his What the Bleep France show of every single topic in France. Eventually, he's going to have the monopoly on everything.
Yeah. Well, I help him write some of those episodes, so I claim some of that stuff, not all of it.
You guys can't just claim everything because you talked about it.
Well,
and we talked about dubbing before, and he did a show on that. Was that?
But all the things that we could say about all these words and. Go and see, ladies and gentlemen, go and see Paul Taylor's show.
Now, this has turned into an ad for Paul Taylor.
But you should see his show because he does all of those words.
Why is it still going?
It's still going, yeah. Oh, the advert. Yeah,
I mean, your advert for Paul Taylor. But I guess you do work for him. What about your comedy?
I don't work for him.
Well, you just said you write for him.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean I work. I'm not contractually bound to him.
Okay.
But the words, you're right. There are so many words, like with ing, that French people have decided that are words, but in English they're not actually words.
I've got a word that you probably haven't got copyright on yet.
Yeah, go on.
Le snacking.
Yeah, no, I don't.
That's a new one, isn't it?
Yeah. What is that?
Well, they've turned a word. So normally, ing. I'm not an English teacher, but maybe you can correct me. It's normally some kind of like doing verb, isn't it? Like a what do you call them?
It's
the
like
ing,
present participle.
Whoa.
And so, but now you talk of like a place where you can get a snack.
Right.
Aller au snacking. Calling the place a snacking, kind of like bucking in the same way. It's not doing anything. It's an object with it sounds just.
It's just wrong. It's just wrong.
That someone needs to tell them.
Like, oi, French people, stop it. Stop putting on an ing on everything and making it a place.
Turning verbs into nouns. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah. But then you could say the Québécois who do the opposite, is they turn everything into French. So they wouldn't be using all these. They wouldn't say like weekends, but say fin de semaine. Maybe that's the proper way to do it.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think? You think that's
Direct translation of the English phrase into...
Yeah, at least they won't make
French.
mistakes and you just misuse the English words.
Yeah. I find it quite funny, though, the way that all those words arrive. Just lots of blah, 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 ing.
I think it's interesting because usually the French people are very guarded about letting new, especially English words, into the French language. As many people have probably heard, like the word email and hashtag, the Académie Française said, nope.
Non.
Non,
C'est pas possible.
Non, c'est pas
Was it
possible.
courriel?
Courriel is an email.
What's
and
hashtag?
Mot dièse.
Oh, okay.
Mot
That's
dièse.
that's the translation for hash, isn't it?
Oh, is
Just
it?
hash,
I
yeah.
guess so.
Is that how? That's how you get hash in France? That's why I never knew
You mean
that.
the jug you got to the street corner?
Oh no.
Oui, mot dièse.
Right, yeah, because the French decided to try and protect the language.
The guardians of French, the Académie Française.
Right, the guardians of the French language.
Yeah, and they don't let anything in, really, as I understand.
So what they do then is they just develop or create these new English words just to mess with us.
Yeah.
But they say which words are allowed into the dictionary, don't they, every year? But
Right.
so actually, speaking of which, selfie is now a French word.
Oh, so that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, selfie's all right.
How come they let that one in?
You know what? Fact
some
of the
lobbying
day.
going
Fact of the day. Have we got a jingle for fact of the day?
We'll find one.
Fact of the day.
Hang
You
on,
got
do
it
that
there.
again and we'll use it in the future.
Fact of the day.
Did you know that the word selfie actually comes from Australia? Jingle.
Oh, really? That was your fact of the day.
Brought to you by... We need a sponsor.
Brought to you by
The
Rhodia
Académie
Notepad.
Française.
Yeah.
No, yeah, an Australian guy made it up when he took a picture, which isn't such a surprise, perhaps, for anyone who's spoken to an Australian before. We like to add E and O to the end.
Normally
of everything.
O, right?
Yeah, like...
Because I thought you'd be like, yeah, g'day, let's take a selfo.
Oh, that's
Normally
not
it's a
bad for an Australian accent.
selfo.
Yeah, they say
Everything's O at the end.
Yeah, like the servo. Servo is a service station.
Yeah.
Go down to the servo. Yeah, so selfie.
Do they call you Olo?
Yeah, you shouldn't be
No,
Ollie.
they don't. They do E or O.
Okay. So
You,
it's
just gotta,
Ollie or
you have to
Olo.
have the ear for it.
Okay.
So, some guy took a picture of himself and put it on a blog. It was maybe, I don't know, 2008 or something, I'm just guessing. But a while back, and he wrote, here's me selfie down at the servo. And then, they trace back when the word was first used. So,
Right, I see.
yeah. So,
So
I'm glad to hear it's
selfie
come to
made
French.
it.
It made it to
instant-
French.
But servo didn't make it.
Le selfie.
Right.
I bet it's a le.
It is a le. Why would you decide for it to be a le or a la, actually? But it's although it finishes in IE, it looks more feminine, doesn't it?
Brasserie.
Ouais, la brasserie.
Maybe you guys have heard about this. There's an English guy that works at the Académie Française.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, like the one man that got in there.
So is he the guy putting all these English words?
Yeah.
It's French.
Maybe he's Australian.
James Bond made it in the
He's been sent by the Queen.
007, James Bond.
right. Yeah.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. Hey, if anyone knows anything about this English guy, get in contact with us because we should have him on the show.
Yeah. You need him to explain what it's like on the inside.
Yeah,
He
he's
must have-
infiltrated.
Yeah, a lot of pressure, I bet.
Wow.
Things that we might blow his cover.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah, I'll do the interview. Oh, damn! I forgot I was a MI6 agent.
Do you think they wear like robes at the academy?
Yes.
What is, for anyone that's listening doesn't know what it is?
I
What
think-
they are? They're the guys that make sure French stays French. Is that what they do? I don't know.
I guess they wander around in long robes,
Like the Da Vinci Code.
carrying heavy books and doing low-level chanting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
all that
you know
kind of
what?
thing.
That's my one secret to sounding more French is to do a chant just like that.
Right. Oh, that's it. They're going ba. No.
You unlock the
suffit.
secret of founding
The other
French.
secret is to just do a chant like you just did, Luke. Between whenever you have a pause.
No.
Oh, you're good at it. How good is your French?
It's not very good.
Oh, okay.
What I always say is that my French isn't very good, but my excuses are improving all the time.
That's pretty good. Check out his comedy show. No, that was actually a good one. We had a guest that said, I said, how's your French? And he said, pretty good except the verbs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not bad.
Yes.
Everything but. Yeah.
What about, have you seen these, another reason that maybe French people aren't so good at English, and you know that they ranked last in the EU in a
Really?
November study of their last in the
That's
EU.
gotta hurt.
Yeah. That they put some.
Where were Britain? Were they number one?
I think they would have. I think they would have been up the top. But yeah, out of 72 countries over the world, they came about halfway through, but dead last in the EU.
Oh,
yeah.
That's got to be painful.
But what I was going to bring up, some of these the what do you call billboards have English words on them. Have you seen these? So they have a big word like drink Coca-Cola, and they have it in English now. It's more and more. But then there's a little asterisk.
Always translate the...
Yeah, they have it in French, but even into the tiniest letters at the bottom.
Yeah. Have you seen when it's slang that they translate, and they just translate into like normal French, which is even weirder?
Well, they translate their own French slang into normal French.
No. So there'll be, I don't know, some English slang on there, and then they'll translate it in a universally understandable French sentence.
I see.
Yeah, which is I've always thought kind of strange.
And that's a legal obligation. They have to put the translation.
Francophonie. I don't know. Do you know? I don't know much about it. I remember reading about it.
Yeah, you got to have everything in
legal.
French for people to understand.
Otherwise, you wake up at the night and all you can hear coming down the street is this chant and this sort of like this humming noise coming down the street, and it's the Académie Française coming to get you.
No.
That's what they do on the doorbell when you're there.
Speaking of adverts, French, English, the worst one I think I saw was recently. I think it was on without naming names, a pizza company, and it said on it was about this cheesy crust thing. The
Pizza Hut, by the way.
I thought Domino's.
Maybe it said on it fun à dipper. Do you understand that?
Fun to dip.
Fun à dipper.
Oh, controversial.
So and they've made dipper. It's not even a French word,
and fun
they've turned it
French
into
word either.
And they're conjugating it French
dipper.
way. Yeah, dipper.
Wow. Now, what next, Honestly, it's just going to be the death of culture, isn't it?
Well, I mean, firstly, the pizza dipping is where the death of culture happened for me. What are they dipping it in?
Right.
What are you dipping your pizza in?
Sauce américaine.
Oh, American sauce. What is American sauce?
American sauce is that, I don't know, some kind of like mayonnaise ketchup-y thing, isn't it? It's that orange.
It's when ketchup meets mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So dipping the pizza, that's when the slippery slope began, isn't it?
Yeah.
And France lost all its credibility.
Everything fell apart from that moment. As soon as the first pizza got dipped into that American sauce, that was just the end of culture, European culture in general. Yeah.
I agree with you. Did they have a translation underneath, or was it close
enough?
Yeah,
I can find it again, but I'll have to tell you by the end of the show.
We'll post it on the Facebook page or the website.
Look forward to finding out.
What do you mean, which Facebook page? Oh, the Eiffel Tower. You just go facebook.com/the Eiffel Tower. But we're running out of time already. Let's talk quickly about your comedy.
So I do stand up in Paris in English. In front of groups of sort of some French people, some expats, and some tourists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereabouts? Where would we catch you?
I do sort of other people's shows, so I don't have my own show.
Well, you mean you write them or you perform? What?
No, I perform at other people's shows.
Right.
And like to be known here as a stand-up, you need to have your own show, basically.
If you mention Paul Taylor one more time, I swear.
Like Sebastian Marx, for example.